All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 10 o'clock a.m. I would also like to ask, as a courtesy to all, please ensure that you have silenced your cell phones. Also, I would like to remind our directors to turn their microphones on and off each time they speak to help the audio and video recordings. Each director received notice of the board meeting. The public meeting notice was properly posted as required by law. Notification was received from the directors stating that they would be present for this meeting. We have set aside this time to hear from you, the general public. Those of you that were interested in providing comments and filled out one of the cards available at the receptionist desk will be called to approach the podium to make your comments at this time. Seeing that no one wishes to speak, we will move forward on the agenda. Agenda item number 1. Report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2016 second quarter budget report by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning. The first on my agenda here is the second quarter results. Details of the information on the slides is included in your package. And second quarter is December, January, and February. The first slide I have is a graphic summary of our 3 key elements of financial statements. First one is revenue.
Volume. We can't hear you up here.
Oh, we can't?
There you go.
Better? Okay. All right. Good. 3 key elements of financial statements is revenue is one of them. And in revenue, we were $5.3 million ahead of our budget. And in that was basically additional water sales that we did not budget. I do have another part of the graph here to show that we are over 90% collection in the first half of our revenue, which is typical of our contracts that we have. Second is our expenses, which were $2.8 million under budget, and that's due primarily to basically lower spending across all the different departments. As well as we did sell the West Central Brazos pipeline, and that expenses are not in the numbers now. And last is our projects. In our projects, we were $9.6 million under budget. Now, I'm expecting that we'll only spend between now and end of the fiscal year about $12 million. And this is due to delays in projects, basically timing differences, and project starts. We have taken the $9 million and have rolled it into the FY17 budget. This is the detailed financial statements. The key takeaway here is the $1.2 million sale of West Central Brazos pipeline. And then this is the chart that I show that shows 53% of our fixed cost is in salaries, benefits, and basically debt service cost. This concludes the agenda. Are there any questions?
Seeing no questions, we'll go to agenda item number 2. Report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2016 second quarter investment officer's report by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
Again, this is another report that I bring to you each quarter that shows our investment portfolio and its performance. The first chart is basically looking at the book values, and there wasn't much change between the first quarter and second quarter numbers. We ended up about $89 million. Next tells you how we invested the CDs in the maturity blocks, and about 50% of it is in 6 months or less. And last is the performance of the portfolio, and we're sitting right at 77% or 77 basis points. And again, the Federal Reserve raise of 25 basis points has ticked it up about 12 basis points between the 2 quarters. We're still performing better than the Texas pool as well as the Treasury bill. Any questions?
Seeing no questions. Agenda item number 3, discussion and possible action on surplus personal property by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, you know that statute requires that we come before you to dispose of properties, and we need your approval to do that. And this is for properties that are no longer needed, the cost to repair is not efficient, or basically we just are not needing the property. So I kind of want to explain a little bit about how we get rid of property around here. We have a form that's filled out by the different regions and submitted in. In that form, it describes the property, what's wrong with it, and why they want to dispose of it, and actual pictures of it. We then take it, we approve it, and then we bring this onto what's called an asset catalog. Asset catalog that sits out there for a number of days to see if anybody in the group wants to use the property. If they don't want to use the property, then we bring it before the board for disposal, for your approval. Now, things like that is like vehicles. Let's talk a little bit about vehicles. We look at 10 years or older, 100,000 miles or more, or even the cost of the vehicle has gotten to a point that we can't really repair them anymore. Once you guys have approved the property, we then go and put it on a well-advertised auction to sell it. So now what I'm going to do is go show you the resolution and the properties, let you look at the properties. If you have questions on the properties, be more than ask the question on it, and then I'll read the resolution of the properties. First is the central office. Continues. I will say on the IT equipment, we do remove the hard drives and destroy them before we sell them. Central Basin, Lake Granbury, and Possum Kingdom. And technical services. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Then I'll go back and read the resolution.
Thank you.
Be resolved, the Board of Directors of Brazos River Authority hereby authorize the General Manager, CEO, to dispose of the following surplus properties under the terms and conditions that are at best interest of Brazos River Authority. Be it further resolved that the Board authorize the General Manager, CEO, in certain instances, to continue to use and or maintain the previously authorized surplus property in a manner that is best interest of Brazos River Authority until appropriate replacement property is received and placed in service. Items no longer needed, repairs not cost efficient. Central office. That's a Canon PowerShot camera SD110IS, 13 office chairs, 2 Motorola walkie-talkie model CP200s, 4 flat screen LG TVs, 2 picture tube TVs, 60 PC monitors, 90 desktop computers, 85 laptops, computers, 16 servers, 98 routers, switches, 11 printers, 4 fax machines, 2005 Chevy Blazer VIN, 1G NCS 13X05K114752 two-wheel, 2010 Chevy 2500 HD. VIN number is 1GC4KVBG6AF1 22668 four-wheel drive. Herman Miller Furniture, office furniture, shelves, lights, desktops, hardware, various sizes and colors. 15 metal napkin holders, 2 18 by 25 by 1/4 glass, 1 24 by 36 wood frame whiteboard, 1 24 by 36 aluminum frame whiteboard. Central Basin, is 2 Quincy air compressors, model ATV580, HP color laser jet copier fax machine, model 2840, Venturi 24-inch flow meter, primary flow signal, model 24A HUT CI 24 by 12.6 inch, 64-inch. Ventura 24-inch rose mount flow meter models, number 1151GP7E124183. 2 Milton pumps, model number D23X8PM441N. 4 Milton pumps, model number D46X8PM441N. And then Milton Roy assorted pump parts, Lake Granbury. Canon Power Shop camera, model SX160S1S or IS. Fuji camera, model Fine Pix S602. Sony Cyber Shot camera, Possum Kingdom. Daewoo TV, model number DTQ13B5FC, 12-inch screen. Go Video VHS player, model DDV3110, LEVHS tapes. Magnavox VH copier, model MVR20V6. Texas Code annotated LE books. Bridgemaster ARC spray system. 2-track 29-inch model 4300 mountain bikes. Fill-Rite fuel pump, model 701V, 1,000-gallon gas tanks. Viking lube pump for 3900 Manitowoc crane. Viking oil pumps. 2 sump pumps. A 1990 Ford F-150 truck, VIN number 1FTEF15NILPA27403. 1991 International dump truck, VIN number 1HTSAVZ R9 RN5MH347410. 2007 Ford F-50 SC four-wheel drive, VIN number 1FTVX14507NA54697. Technical services, a Fisher Scientific refrigerator, model number 13986-227R. Manitoba ice maker, model S400. Analytic balance, model AG104. StereoMaster dissecting microscope. Quantity tray sealer, model 2X.
You've heard a reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Ms. Kilgore, second by Ms. Flores. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Beth, Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Bettis,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Kristen,
Yes.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Okay, agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action on retaining a firm to manage and administer Brazos River Authority 457 parentheses B/401 parentheses A plans by Monica Wheelis, Human Resource Manager.
It's really very difficult to follow such an exciting item. I'll move this away. You can hear me without the mic, I think. This agenda item is to request authorization for the general manager to enter into contracts with a 457-401 administrative provider. ICMA has been our provider for our 457 plan for 20 years, and then when we froze the retirement plan in 2007, we shifted the 401 match over to ICMA. So they've been administering the 401 plans also for about 9 years. Over the last several years, we've been concerned about their fund performance in comparison to their benchmarks, and we've had several discussions with them about that. In addition to, we believe that their fees are higher than they probably should be. So about a year or so ago, they brought a new administrative services agreement to us, and they wanted us to enter into a 7-year agreement with them. However, we felt that their performance wasn't good enough, and since it's been so long since we've shopped this service, we thought we'd put out an RFP and see if we could get interest from other providers and maybe lower the fees that have better performance. We put out an RFP in March. We received the responses back, and we have a consultant that's reviewing them at this time. We received 5 responses back, and the consultant will bring probably 3 providers back for us to do an interview and see a presentation on their products, and then we anticipate making a decision about mid-May. So what we're asking for is authorization for Phil Ford to enter into whatever contracts and agreements and adopting plan documents that he needs to do when we select the new provider. Are there any questions? I'll show you the.
Okay. Read your resolution, please.
All right. Whereas, effective as of October 16, 1995, the Board of Directors authorized the establishment of a 457 deferred compensation plan for the employees of the Brazos River Authority to be administered by the International City Managers Association, ICMA. Whereas, effective as of July 16, 2007, the Board of Directors authorized ICMA to manage the administration of all future 401A matching contributions. Whereas, effective as of July 30th, 2007, the Board of Directors authorized the General Manager, CEO, to direct ICMA to invest the Brazos River Authority's non-vested matching contributions into a balanced fund that is substantially consistent with the asset allocation strategy of the retirement plan of employees for employees of the Brazos River Authority, and whereas it is prudent to explore benefit provider options and, when necessary, transition plan administrative functions to ensure the Brazos River Authority, to ensure the Brazos River Authority is providing employees with high-quality, well-managed benefits. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to execute any and all documents necessary to continue the operation of the 457 Deferred Compensation Plan and the 401 Matching Contribution Plans. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to direct the investment of the Brazos River Authority's non-vested 401 matching contributions into the plan's money market fund.
You've heard a reading of the resolution. Motion to adopt, Tallis. All right.
Our last retirement committee, we have to do the new training.
You know, does this fit with that? Meaning the responsibilities of the retirement committee, along with giving Chairman Ford the ability, I'm just worried about, since I haven't done that training yet.
Correct. This is pulled out of the retirement committee.
Right.
When we froze the plan, this DC portion, the 401, was pulled out. So it's no longer under the purview of the retirement committee.
Okay.
And what we will do is there's new regulations coming out for investment advisors. And so we will have the fiduciary responsibilities put forth on the new regulations. I think you're probably familiar that have coming out. We'll put those on the responsibility of the provider that, the administrator that we bring in.
And then second question, the consultant that we used, who is he? And
It's through IPS. We used IPS for the insurance consulting, and they also have a retirement branch.
Okay.
And we knew that we were looking at doing this, so when we contracted for the insurance, we put in a provision that, hey, we may need some assistance with the 457 in the future.
Okay.
And so he's reviewing that with his team.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Richard, second. Who you got there?
Rusty.
Rusty. Put Rusty polls. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zacanito,
Yes.
Agenda item number 5, report and possible discussion on Brazos Watermaster update by Brad Brunette.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Y'all probably recall over the last several years, we've had a number of agenda items that have touched on the Brazos Watermaster operations. That process started with a petition by water right holders several years ago, and ultimately the Watermaster program came into being last year and officially started on June 1st, 2015. I think at our last meeting, the board requested that we invite the Watermaster folks here to give a presentation, and so that's what we've done today. We have with us Amy Sedemeyer and Molly Moeller. Amy is the TCEQ Watermaster Section Manager that works out of the Austin office, and she oversees all 4 Watermaster program areas that exist within the state of Texas. And then Molly is the Brazos Watermaster, and she works out of the TCEQ office here in Waco. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Molly to give you all an update and a status report on the program over the last year or so. Molly?
Good morning. As Brad said, my name is Molly Moeller, and I have been officially the Watermaster in the Brazos Basin since January of last year. Our program began on June 1st, where I brought on a team of 6 other individuals. The administrative assistant, she's here in Waco, along with 2 deputies here in Waco, and then I have 2 deputies that are in the Stephenville area, and 1 down in Angleton. Our program jurisdiction begins at Lake Possum Kingdom and goes down to Freeport. I came to the Watermaster program here from the San Angelo Concho Watermaster program, where I began at its inception. So this is my second program to start with from the very beginning. This one's a lot larger than the one I'm used to, but we're slowly getting adjusted to it. Our main goal since June 1st, and since the staff came on probably February, but especially since June 1st when we officially began, was to start meeting with all the water right holders in the basin to educate them on what their permit says, what their requirements are, and to make sure that they understood what it means to be in a Watermaster program. We require all of our water right holders to have a meter, and so the very beginning we did a lot of meter certifications, meeting the water right holders out at their property, then making sure that their meter corresponds with what regulations we have. Basically, it has to be within 5% accuracy, and it has to have a non-resettable totalizer. So we made sure that all of that was correct on their meters, and then we put those into a system so that whenever they call in call in their diversions, then we can automatically pull up what their meter is. We can even look at the picture to see if there's some kind of discrepancy. And then if there is, one of our water master deputies will go out and meet the water right holder there if there is a discrepancy, and educate them on how the meter process, calling in and writing out their pump operation reports, how to do that. We're doing a lot of education right now to make sure that everybody understands what it is to be in a Water Master program. And so we're pretty successful right now. We have talked to roughly 77% of our water right holders. That represents about 92% of the water in the Brazos Basin under our jurisdiction. We're still trying to find those water right holders who haven't called us. We've left a lot of business cards on gates. We have stalked them through the internet to try to find phone numbers and correct billing correct addresses, and so there's still a gap there of ones that we need to get in touch with. We have a Water Master Advisory Committee. There's 15 members on that committee, and it represents municipalities, power generation, industries, as well as agriculture users. So it's a very wide range of individuals that sit on that committee. Their responsibility is to approve our budget in July, and then advise on any issues that we think we might come across, or get their advice on how we should proceed if they have an opinion of it. As I said, our main challenge is trying to find water right holders right now. We'll probably continue through the education phase for at least a year to try to get everybody on board. We've had a couple of instances where we've had to be a little bit stronger and make sure that everybody is following the same rules as everybody else. With that, I'll open it up to if anybody has any questions. Yes, sir.
Have you had any resistance from the large stakeholders?
No, we haven't had a lot of resistance, especially from the larger users. They've been very willing to give us what we need, what information we need, call in diversions on a schedule that we set them on. We've had a little bit of resistance from some of the smaller ag users because it is a large cost to them, upfront cost. And so we're working through some of those. We've identified some plans on how to get them in compliance, and so we're following those plans as we move forward. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I had a question. Thank you for being here. It's so nice to meet you in person. And I guess my question is, or comment is, I trust there's been good and excellent cooperation with the BRA staff in helping you fulfill your responsibilities and set up everything.
Yes, BRA staff has been very helpful in contacting their contract holders and making sure that those contract holders are following the same guidelines as what our water right holders have to follow.
And thank you. I was pretty certain of that. I was about 99.9% sure that would be a yes answer. And so I'm glad to hear it, because it's important to hear it from you. Also, some of those water right holders, I would also like to make this comment that many of us on the board, if you'd like to share those in the areas that some of us are from, we'd be glad to help if we can. I know some of the folks that have been from those areas for a long, long time and could possibly help as well.
Okay.
And so thank you so much for the big job you have to do. It has been raining a lot more lately, though.
We have been very blessed with rain last summer, and it looks like the summer is going to be okay as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Yes.
Who met with these permit holders before and administered their pumps?
Good question. So in a non-water master area, it is more of a complaint-driven process. If you have a problem, you call the regional office. They went out on a complaint basis to see if people up and downstream are following what they should be doing in their permit. But in the Water Master program, we have a more hands-on approach. We're constantly monitoring the rivers. We're monitoring who's pulling out at the same time. We put it into a database that tells us who within the section has water. And that helps whenever we get to the drought stage. Drought stage will look closer at who is pulling water in this stretch, what are their priority dates to make sure that the oldest water gets distributed first, and then curtailing those junior water right holders in order to make sure that that senior water right holder gets water. But in a non-water master area, it's completely the regional folks.
The regional folks being who?
The TCEQ has regions all over the state of Texas. For this area, it would have been the Waco Regional Office. They handle air, water, and waste. So if they had a call, somebody complaining that they weren't getting their water, they would either go out in pairs and try to figure out who upstream and downstream, what they're pulling, to see if somebody might be pulling water from the water right holder. But there wasn't any kind of monitoring. It was all on our system, and so if you had a problem here, yes, they can look in the general vicinity, but they don't know what's going on up and down the river basin. So it was a little bit difficult for them. They could address a very small area, not necessarily a basin call or anything, which sparked some of the priority calls that we've seen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir. Oh,
Girl.
yes, ma'am.
Who is in the Angleton office, and where
Is that office located?
The deputy in the Angleton office is Guy Falzerano. We are currently in contracts with Texas Facility Commission to get an office there. Currently, he's in his field office, which is located at his house. It will be located in Angleton next to the Texas Department of Insurance. We'll be in that same complex with them.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I know we have a lot of people drawing water out of the lake for their own personal yards and so forth. Do you monitor that also, or is that self-policing?
Yes. So BRA staff put together a number to correspond with those individuals' houses around the lakes that pull water out of the lake. And then they send that number to us along with the rest of their diversions. They send us diversions on a weekly basis for downstream users, and then for the lakeside users, we get that once a month. Yes, sir.
Do you have management oversight for Corps of Engineer lakes?
Yes. The Core Lake, so let me just explain a little bit. The Concho Water Master Program, we dealt it was very small scale. So City of San Angelo owned the lakes that were there. So dealing with Core Lakes, I'm learning the process on some of those, as well as some of the industries that are out there. So I have to rely on my management to help me through some of those. But yes. Anything further? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on Possum Kingdom Lake Morris Shepherd Dam concrete assessment by Michael McClendon, Upper Basin Regional Manager, and Mark Standall, Engineering Service Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, Mark Stendall and I, our Engineering Services Manager, will provide this presentation for your consideration today. As you know, our objective is to extend the service life of all our assets, and to that end, we are proposing to undertake a process by which we would obtain an assessment of the various concrete elements at Moore Shepherd Dam. As I walk through some of these slides, some of you folks will recognize that you've seen these before, but I felt that going back and retracing some of the history was important. With this presentation, I'm going to walk you through a few slides that depict the different concrete elements that are associated with Moore Shepherd Dam. Then I'm going to walk through a recent repair. Actually, it was probably about 2 years ago that the repair was made. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and Mark is going to explain the proposed engineering assessment. Moore Shepherd Dam consists of various concrete elements. You can see depicted here the foundations, buttresses. You got upstream deck panels, downstream deck panels, operating piers, and then, of course, you got the intake structure. These concrete elements, they typically have, when they were first constructed, about a 50-year life cycle is what was anticipated. And as we all know, Moore Shepherd Dam is about 75 years old. We have had our experts out there, engineers have looked at the dam, and they say if we maintain the facility properly that we can achieve another 100 years worth of life. So it's kind of like if you take care of your car, your equipment, you can extend the life of that, and that's what we're attempting to do today. This is another slide that illustrates some of the concrete elements associated with the dam, just a different photograph. The concrete maintenance program that Mark is going to be speaking about here shortly, it complements our existing program that we have in place, which includes monitoring, inspection, and then also making repairs to the dam. This slide is a brief timeline of some of the significant events that have occurred at Moore Shepherd Dam. Some of y'all have probably heard that there was some movement of the spillway, and that was during the middle 80s. The cause of that movement was determined. Corrective action was taken to stabilize the structure at that time, and that was around the mid-90s, 1994, that action was taken. Along with that stabilization effort, we did notice several cracks and spalls. Those were addressed as part of the remediative action. In addition, we also instituted an extensive monitoring program, and that continues to this day. Some additional cracks and spalls have been noted since that time, and if they're left alone, they can grow and expand over time. But like I said, the last major study of this was in 1994, 1995. And so we're proposing to go back and look at some of these cracks and spalls. One thing I did want to point out that, as I said, we've had some of the engineers and some of the experts in the field looking at the dam, and they have noted that none of the cracks and spalls are identified as a safety issue. And so this study is going to help us identify where best to apply some of the limited financial resources that we have. This is an example of a spalling and corrosion on a downstream deck panel, and you can see in the photograph here some of the spalled concrete, of course, and then some of the rebar where corrosions occurred. And now I'm going to walk you through that repair that I mentioned. The repair was made to the corbel area. The corbels are these areas depicted in red that you can see on the buttresses here. This slide is illustrative of exactly where the crack and spall was noted. It's depicted in the red circle. This is just a closer up view of the crack, and from a distance it doesn't look very large, but whenever you get closer, it was about a 4 foot by 6 foot crack and spall, and then it was also about 4 to 9 inches deep. So whenever our RSMU group, that's our on-site maintenance folks up at Possum Kingdom, they went in and they removed some of the deteriorated concrete, and then they applied the new rebar and then the zinc anodes. And the zinc anodes they're sacrificial anodes to protect the rebar against further corrosion. Then they have to go up. This is probably about 60, 80 foot up in the air. They have to form and brace the area. Then they have to use a man lift to pour the grout. And this is a photograph of the completed repair. Just for comparative purposes, this specific repair cost about $30,000 to remediate. Once we conduct a comprehensive assessment of all the cracks and spalls, we're going to understand really what's causing that to occur. And then we'll have a better understanding of the extent of the repairs and the cost, and also the schedule associated with that. And I'm going to turn it over to Mark now, and Mark's going to walk you through the engineering component of this project.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. As Mike indicated, the Morris Shepherd Dam, our tallest dam and holding back our largest amount of water, has served 1.5 times its estimated life the day it was built. But the industry has decided or has determined that with good maintenance of the concrete dams, we can preserve their life and continue to keep them in service. Our goal is to do exactly that. To date, we have hired the peer review committee that was approved last April. These gentlemen have been, they're world leaders, if you will, in their specialty fields in this area. They've helped us to generate a request for qualifications for firms to serve as the program manager. And we then put out the RFQ. We selected Wiss Janney Elstner as the best qualified firm. And then our technical advisors helped us to negotiate a detailed scope of services that got us the answers to the right questions at a reasonable cost and reasonable level of effort. That scope of work is going to be presented here today for authorization. We will, assuming that moves forward today, we will conclude the negotiation of scope and fee in May of this year. We will then perform over the next 22 or 23 months the work of the project, which is to determine what's the best course of action for preserving the life of the dam. We will then contract later for repairs if necessary and engineering services related thereto. Our peer review board that we hired as of last April reports directly to us. They do not report to the program manager. And they are to help us make sure we do this right. The Castle program manager will undertake the, okay, we'll go here. The basic tasks. One of the most important is the reinforced concrete condition survey. As we prepare to spend a lot of money keeping this dam in service, one of the things we want to make sure is that the underlying concrete is healthy. There are a number of issues that can come up because of the age of the concrete and the technology that was used back in 1941, where this concrete may or may not be sound throughout the dam. So we need to make sure before we spend money preserving the concrete that it's healthy in the first place. So we're going to spend a good bit of time and effort on that, and then a lot of effort in determining what needs to be fixed and what are the priorities. Those are the 6 major components of this contract, totaling $2.8 million, almost 2.9. At the end of the project, we will get what we're calling a roadmap of how to proceed with the repairs, starting with the options that will be prepared by the program manager. Those options could include self-performance, design contracts, construction contracts, whatever it makes sense for the BRA, and then the BRA will select the program it suits it best. Then the program manager will take it back and develop an implementation plan, cost estimates for the work, and then we will adopt those as a group. Mike, you want to? Question?
What is available to make sure that we don't have destruction below the water line? How do they, I mean, this is all on the surface and visible. How do you do it below the water line?
There's a comprehensive underwater inspection by a dive team scheduled as part of it. In addition, we're going to be using high-res UAV photography on the parts of the dam that are inaccessible. So it will be the first comprehensive assessment of the dam since the 1994 era. But we will be inspecting underwater as well.
Worst comes to worst, what do?
How do you repair it?
How do you build a new dam downstream? I mean, what's the...
There are several intermediate steps we could consider if repair isn't the wise thing to do. We're convinced it's going to be the wise thing to do, but we need to make sure that this board knows for sure that that money is well spent year after year. So we will be checking into that, but we're reasonably confident it won't come to that. Now, there's some intermediate steps. One would be convert the dam to a gravity dam so that the reinforced concrete elements are no longer relied upon to hold back the forces of the water. we buttress those with ballast and concrete so that they're no longer spanning from buttress to buttress. That's one approach. We'll try to stay away from your suggestion, which would be the most time-consuming and uncertain long-term solution. Sure.
What is the oldest dam in the States?
I couldn't tell you that for sure, but I know Buchanan is 2 years older than PK.
Which one?
Buchanan.
Buchanan. But about in the country, though. I mean, Hoover or somebody? Or?
You've got me. I don't know.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, in the United States, we've never had one fail yet.
There actually have been dam failures, which led to the Dam Safety Act of 1977, something like that. There have been a few dam failures,
but not massive ones.
But in this particular case, this particular style of dam is not a very common style.
Oh.
And so a lot of the standards that have been developed for other dams, they haven't developed standards for this style of dam because it doesn't occur very often. Sure.
It's going to be 2 years before they give us our assessment of what needs to be done?
Approximately, yes.
We'll provide updates along the way too, if necessary, because we'll have intermediate steps. We can come back to the board in 6 months and kind of give you updates.
If you're ready, more questions? The following resolution is presented for consideration to the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority for adoption at its January 25th, April 25th, 2016 meeting. Stand corrected. Be it resolved, the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract with Wiss, Janey, Elstner Associates, Inc., to perform a comprehensive concrete assessment and service life recommendation study for Morris Shepherd Dam in an amount not to exceed $2,885,900.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Tallis? A second? You got down there a second. Yeah. Hold the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Right.
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item number 7. Discussion and possible action on trolley replacement construction contract by Michael McClendon, Upper Basin Regional Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed a few people raising their hands trying to say the date was wrong, and it was read into the record correct, and it'll be changed on the resolution when it's signed to read April 25th. That was a prior resolution. So I just want to make that clarification. Thank you, sir. Today I'm going to discuss our proposed trolley replacement project at De Cordova Bend Dam. So we're moving downstream a little bit to Granbury. De Cordova Bend Dam has 2 existing hoist trolleys. These are about 47 years old. They were constructed whenever the dam was constructed back in around 1969. The trolley mechanisms allow BRA to perform necessary operations and maintenance activities that are associated with either the Tainer gates or the low flow gates. They're used, and you can see in this photograph here, to set stop logs. This is a small stop log that's being set to do some operations on the low flow project. It's become more commonplace for malfunctions to occur, necessitating repairs. And when component parts are needed, we also are having to fabricate new parts. So when we looked at our various options, we performed a study, and that study recommended replacement of both of the trolleys with a single trolley. And that single trolley will remove both the Tainer gates. Those are the big, large gates that pass floodwaters. And then it'll be able to remove or install the low-flow gates. Arcadis performed the engineering design for this project, and really there's two components that are associated with this project. And one of the components was the fabrication of a new trolley or winch cart. And then the other component of the project is a structural modification to the bridge deck. Because of the weight and size of the proposed new trolley, we had to structurally reinforce the bridge deck. We constructed the bid when we went out for bid such that a firm could bid on either one or both components of the project. We knew going in that the fabricator of a winch cart generally doesn't have the structural competence within house to do those necessary repairs that are going to be done. So we went out for bid. With regard to the trolley or the winch cart, we received 3 bids. The lowest bid was $1.1 million. However, after we began reviewing the bids, the firm that had submitted that bid had qualified its bid with exceptions to the specifications, and they also didn't have the required insurance. So we wound up disqualifying that firm and moved on to the next firm, and their bid was $1.3 million. That firm is Alltech Engineering. Alltech Engineering began some work for us up at Possum Kingdom here about 4 or 5 months ago. They've done an excellent job up there, and so I don't anticipate any problems with qualifying them. With regard to the modification or the structural component of the dam, we received 2 bids, pretty competitive bids at $609,000. Jurassic Construction was the low bidder for that. Arcadis has done their review of Jurassic and has recommended that we contract with them and move forward. You can see down here at the bottom, we've attempted to align our cash flow with the project. We have $1 million to spend associated with the project this year, and then we're looking at $1.4 million next year. The project should end next year. The long lead item on this project is the fabrication of the winch cart, and that's probably about 7 to 9 months. I do have a resolution for your consideration, but I'd also entertain any questions that the board may have at this juncture.
Question.
Is there a risk of just having one trolley? If it goes down, you be able to function?
Yes, sir. One of the things that we could do if it did go down is bring, I'm going to use the wrong term, but a crane up on the bridge deck to help remove one of the stop logs.
Any more questions? Read your resolution, please.
The following resolution is presented for consideration to the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority for adoption at its April 25th, 2016 meeting. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract with Jurassic Construction to provide construction services for the trolley replacement project at Day Cordova Bend Dam in a total amount not to exceed $609,029. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract to provide winch cart fabrication services for the trolley replacement project at Day Cordova Bend Dam in a total amount not to exceed $1,432,500.
You heard the resolution. Motion to adopt. Kilgore, second. Newton. Poll board, please.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Dennis,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back 10 minutes. If everybody will take your seat, we'll continue. I'd like to make an announcement that if you're talking to your neighbor, make sure that your mic is turned off because it's being picked up by the recorder. All right, agenda item number 8. Discussion and possible action on integral agreement with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department for invasive species by David Collingsworth.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll be doing the next 5 or 6 agenda items, and I apologize up front for my cough drop. You'll enjoy my presentations a whole lot more if I keep it in. This is really kind of a housekeeping issue. For the last few years, we've been providing money to a campaign that Texas Parks and Wildlife has had to fight the spread of zebra mussels. And the best way to for me to tell you what a zebra mussel is just think of a fire ant, and it's the fire ant in the water. And that's what they look like. A full-grown zebra mussel is about the size of your thumbnail, and they just go crazy, and they build on top of each other, and they have significant ecological impacts to reservoirs, but also, as you can see, they attach. And my bad. Sorry. This one here at the bottom, that's actually zebra mussels that have built up in a pipeline. So you can understand in the water treatment and transportation business, zebra mussels are a very scary issue to deal with. They've been dealing with them on the Great Lakes for years. They're an exotic species that came from Europe. And right now they're in a handful of Texas reservoirs, and the only reservoir that there's been an actual confirmed infestation in the Brazos Basin right now is in Lake Belton. However, the way they have transported themselves from the Great Lakes down through Texas, it'll only be a matter of time until they're widespread throughout Texas. So we work with Parks and Wildlife and other river authorities in the city of Dallas and the city of Austin, and to try to make sure that Texas Parks and Wildlife has the funds that they need to do the PSAs and get signs out, and they give us maps, and they do an excellent job making sure that boaters aren't trying to inadvertently transport zebra mussels. So the whole purpose is recently at a board meeting, you guys approved an interlocal agreement to allow the BRA and Parks and Wildlife to do some fish habitat stuff. We wanted to follow suit with that and have an interlocal agreement for this. It's more transparent, it's more auditable, and that way in years down the road we'll have more transparency in showing how we spent the money. So the purpose of this interlocal is to allow the GM CEO to execute an interlocal agreement with Parks and Wildlife. Any questions?
David, is that just a freshwater animal?
It is just a freshwater animal, and that's a good question. Early on, it was thought that it couldn't deal with salt water. However, the biologists are surprised that it's dealt with the salinities even in Lake Texoma. So it's also like a fire ant. As it moves, it's kind of evolving, and the species is evolving to be a little bit more tolerant of certain situations. Yes, sir.
Has there been any at PK?
There has been no positive test of zebra mussels in PK, Granbury, or Lake Limestone. However, because of the flow of traffic between Lake Texoma and Lake Possum Kingdom, that's one of our concerns in funding studies like this.
How do they fight
The zebra mussels, I mean, is it, they just have communications and tell people to watch your boats, or what do they do?
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. They do commercials. There's numerous times a year I'll go out to Lake Waco to put my boat in, and they'll have volunteers out doing questionnaires telling you. Texas Parks and Wildlife also passed some regulations in Texas now. When you take your boat out, you have to drain and dry your boat. So it's a word of mouth educational campaign. There was one more question.
David, where are the real problem lakes in Texas with this?
The real problem lakes are Lake Texoma And then some of the feeder creeks, I believe, into Lake Lavon, which also gets water out of Lake Texoma. But Lake Texoma is the primary source. Yep.
Okay. Any more? Will you read the resolution, please, sir?
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to execute an interlocal agreement with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to provide funding in an amount not to exceed $20,000 toward the public awareness campaign to fight the spread of invasive species in waters of the Brazos. And that $20,000, by the way, is over 2 years.
Okay. You've heard the resolution. Is motion to adopt. Dennis, Carolyn, read the resolution, please.
He already read it.
Did you read the resolution?
He read it already.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Bennis?
Yes.
Director Bold?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Christensen. Oh, he's out.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Flores?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Shore?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action on House Bill 1437, Alliance Water by David Collingsworth.
Thank you. This agenda item takes a little bit more of a history lesson. Back in the late 90s, there was some jockeying going around for water in western parts of Williamson County. And legislation was drafted and ultimately approved that allowed the transfer of water from Lake Travis outside the Brazos River Basin including an interbasin transfer to customers of the Brazos River authorities that didn't necessarily at the time share the intercontinental divide, if you will. So what it allowed is it allowed for the transfer of 25,000 acre feet of water to be considered for folks like Round Rock, Hutto, Georgetown, and what used to be called Chisholm Trail. While that provided an opportunity, the legislation also has some pretty unfriendly language for the ratepayers of the Brazos River Authority, in that it mandated that all of the water that comes out of the Travis Basin be replaced drop for drop back into the Colorado Basin. And it was done so in such a fashion that the LCRA Board of Directors maintained the sole authority to determine how and a cost structure for making sure that that water was going to be replaced, or that money was going to be put in place to make sure that water would ultimately be available. So the predicament that puts the folks that are using that water in, and the predicament that it puts the BRA in, is that at some point in time when this water is being taken by the city of Round Rock, and Round Rock has over 20,000 acre feet of it under contract, the small city of Liberty Hill has about 600 acre feet of it under contract. Once they start taking that water, the BRA has to work with the LCRA and figure out how that water is going to be replaced. So instead of allowing the fate to be in the hands of the LCRA and allowing them to charge us for water projects that they were going to implement, with the partnership of the city of Round Rock, we teamed up, and for the last couple of years we've been looking at all of the alternative sources and projects where we can return that water back into the LCRA basin. And what we're looking at is the water that comes out of Lake Travis that comes into the Leander Cedar Park Round Rock area is treated at a wastewater treatment plant here owned by those facilities. And we're looking at the availability of taking that water, as Round Rock uses water out of Lake Travis, and returning that water in some form or fashion into the Travis Basin. At such time, we'll have to negotiate the terms of such an agreement with the with the LCRA. There are other benefits to the LCRA for accepting that water. One is Cedar Park and Leander have water that's not associated with that House bill that actually ends up into the Brazos Basin that could be returned. So there's a significant benefit to the LCRA for getting their hands on more water, and the significance to the BRA and the city of Round Rock is that hopefully we can control our own destiny and what the cost of that water looks like in the future. Right now, as a part of that piece of legislation, we pay a surcharge for that water. Right now, the surcharge is 25%, so we pay the mathematical equation. It comes out to about 25%. So we're paying about, what's LCRA's water rate? 145 plus a 25% surcharge when Round Rock starts taking that water. So it will be very expensive. If we don't have our hands on it. But the real scary part is that the LCRA has the ability to deem as they see appropriate for what that future project looks like. So it could be much more expensive. So it's in our best interest to try to figure out a solution to that problem. For the last couple of years, the city of Round Rock and BRA have half the cost. We've used Karen Freese and Associates. Karen here is in the crowd. She's a businesswoman out of the Austin area that has her fingerprints on a lot of the utilities that the city of Round Rock has developed, and her firm does an excellent job in figuring out solutions to these type of problems. So what we're looking for today is to take this study to the next level. It'll take us about 8 months to come up with the costing and what the preliminary engineering and the costs look like, so that we can come back to you with a proposal to take to the LCRA. Any questions? Yeah.
So that water line from Lake Travis through Cedar Park to Round Rock is under construction, and it should be ready to operate in the next year?
I think that's correct. Yes, sir.
And so if Round Rock elected to take water through that line, but we're not prepared to return the water at this time.
We're not prepared to return water, but we would be paying the fee, the surcharge for that, so that the LCRA could take that and credit us for that water. And right now they're taking that money that we're paying, and they're doing projects like laser leveling of rice farms to conserve water. So the money's being put to a good use to conserve water, but that's how we would meet those needs. But at some point in time, Round Rock would be taking enough water that laser leveling of rice farms wouldn't balance out.
And so generally the thought is to return the water from a waste treatment plant, either, I guess, pipe it over to the appropriate creek so it ends up in the LCRA basin?
And that's what we have to determine. We have to determine there are two creeks, and we have to determine the hydraulic issues associated, the permitting issues, biological issues associated with putting that effluent back in. And then also, hopefully, we can sit down at the table with LCRA and figure out what's most beneficial to them and come up with a win-win solution for both to determine how that water gets accepted. Director Johnson?
I was just thinking that, how do we get out of that? Won't we have water for them that they wouldn't have to take that $25,000 now? Or in the future, figure out a way to get completely out of that and have new legislation?
The issue with getting out of that is that Round Rock spent millions of dollars in investment in a water treatment plant to treat that water from that location. So they would have to be the instigator in finding a way to get rid of that capacity in that water treatment plant if that was in their best interest.
Okay.
So there's challenges associated with that.
I see.
And the city's position has been that they have multiple water supplies in multiple basins, so
and that's actually a backup for them, so they think it's wonderful, but the amount of money seems to be unreasonable in comparison.
So hopefully once we present a solution to LCRA and we have a path forward, then we'll be able to maybe address some of the House bill issues in the future to make the water more affordable for Round Rock and the BRA. The legislation was started being drafted in 98. Was it passed in 99? Is that right? It was either 99 or 2000 is when the legislation went into effect.
And generally, the cost of these improvements, the waste or the water line in, and then whatever the ultimate solution is, Round Rock or I guess his partners, Cedar Park, and whoever else is taking will bear those costs. Is that correct?
I think that's a good point of negotiation. If we're going to be able to return more water to the LCRA, then they could. I don't want to say that they could afford to come get. However, if there's water coming into Leander and Cedar Park, it may not be cost effective to come get that water, and if we can return that water, it may put us in a good situation to negotiate a cost sharing of some type of infrastructure in the future.
Sure.
But they will have to bear some of those costs. Yes, sir.
And I know that we're in the process of going to TCEQ to be able to recapture that effluent inside of our own calculations. And so I understand what you're going through.
We'll have to figure out where the water is most advantageous to the BRA from a cost-effective position. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
At some point, this is the same area where we're looking at using some underground water, some aquifer water in that same area.
Same county. The Trinity, the wells in the Trinity are a little bit further to the east and designated for sources a little bit further to the north.
And what we're trying to do is find out if there's a cheaper way to.
In return, the effluent sal would probably be a cheaper way than drilling a well field that could produce that type of volume.
Anybody else? Okay, read the resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority, I'm sorry. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract amendment with K. Freeze and Associates to fund Phase 3 of the House Bill 1437 No Net Loss Water Study in an amount not to exceed $131,880, and be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute an amendment to the cost share agreement with the City of Round Rock to fund the House Bill 1437 No Net Loss Water Study so that the City of Round Rock is financially responsible for 50% of the Phase 3B cost.
Okay. Heard the resolution. Motion to adopt. Mr. No, I had. Yeah. Munson. Second. That's you. Richard, please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Dennis?
Yes.
Director Bold?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Flores?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes.
All right, agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action on Allen Creek Engineer by David Collingsworth.
This is a facility for us to try to inform you about a change in direction that says that we're fixing to have to get serious about producing more water, and more water is going to cost a boatload of money. We're not going to ask for any money today, but we're going to show you what it is and where it's going to be. It's going to, quite frankly, take some courage on your part, but we're at that point that we've been talking about for as long as I've been here, and that water is fixing to cost. If we're going to get water for a doubling population, we're going to have to pay for it at a higher rate that we haven't seen in the past. So this is our effort to show you the complexities. And oh, by the way, all these complexities are amplified because they're continuously changing. You get one narrowed down. He said, okay, got that fixed, and then something pops out. It's like the guy that had this, and he said, I ain't fixed that one. And it all turned, and that's where we are in this project, David.
You received in your board packets a couple of weeks ago the first write-up for the Allens Creek, and this is an action item to really take the next step forward. And we've talked in the past about moving forward effectively and efficiently, but continuing to march forward. And in that resolution, we left out a whereas, and that was a very important whereas to make sure that we had Houston on the hook for the money that we were spending. So keep that in mind as we talk about this. And as we talk about what we're trying to accomplish, we're still looking at the BRA owning 30% of the reservoir from the dollars that you're going to see, and Houston being a 70% owner in the project. And we've made no secrets about wanting to talk to Houston in the forthcoming days to see about their flexibility to move forward and change that ownership. But right now we need to move forward with MWH, America's Montgomery Watson Harza, and start the long multi-year task of getting our hands around the permitting and getting our hands around all of the different design components. The folks are here with Montgomery Watson Harza. You've seen them here for the last 3 or 4 meetings. They're very committed. SWCA's here. Corolla's here. They're all part of the team, and they're very committed, and it shows in the contract negotiations that we've had and the scope of work that is a masterpiece, if you will, and its intent to capture all of the quality and all of the different components of this project. So, one thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of escape hatches here. So when we say it's time to move forward with a contract with Montgomery Watson Harza for $86 million, that is a contract that takes us all the way through the end of construction for their services. It takes us through permitting, engineering, design, and then it also allows us, should at different times of the project or at any time of the project, should we determine that the project's not constructible or we have other issues either with the project or the team, that we can just take the exit ramp and stop what we're doing. So, and the biggest trump card that you have as a board of directors is you get to approve our annual budget. So we can only spend in this calendar year what you've already approved. So we'll be coming back to you on a frequent basis, giving you updates, and then coming back to you every July saying, okay, here's what we're going to spend next year, and here's how we're going to spend it. And so you have an annual trump card on a project this size going forward. As a reminder to you, this is Allens Creek Reservoir. It's down in Austin County. Once full, it's an off-channel reservoir, and it'll have about 100,000 acre-feet of water. We'll pump water out of the main stem of the Brazos. On days like today, we would be pumping water if the lake wasn't full to fill it up to capture flows. And it serves 2 huge purposes for the Brazos River Authority. It's going to provide additional water downstream for our customers that so desperately need it. And then also, as you'll see, there's just another reference point. As you'll see here in this chain of reservoirs that makes up our intricate system, it is really an ideal management tool for allowing us to manage our drought when that reservoir is full and prolong the releases of water out of some of these other reservoirs. So it really serves 2 major purposes for us. As I said, Montgomery Watson Harza, their actual name is MWH Americas. They're the team that we've been working with. The BRA and the City of Houston went through a very long, drawn-out process to select them and interview them. We've spent months developing a scope of work and negotiating contract, and we're very close to the terms of that being acceptable. We learned a week or 2 ago that Montgomery Watson, or MWH, I always want to call them Montgomery Watson Harza, is being bought out by Stantec, a very large firm. Allow me to get to my notes and get my readers on. Stantec's about a $3 billion business. And this is really right in their wheelhouse. They're in the water infrastructure business, water development business. And after talking with the MWH guys and doing a little research, and our guys doing a little research, it really looks like it's a merger of two companies that are looking for a bigger, more powerful footprint. So some of the benefits to doing business with a very large firm, I think, only get stronger in the ability to make sure that they can deliver a project that's very critical to us, both in time and in quality. So some of the team members, SWCA is the environmental group out of the Houston office that we're using. They've been the ones we've told you earlier that we had to get out and kind of get ahead of the ball and do some studies on the Houston toad because they're pretty particular, and you've got to do those things in January, February, and March. So we're on the downslope of figuring out some of that stuff. They're a great firm, and then you can see some of the other team members, Fugro, Corolla, that'll also be teaming up with them. Some of the major components of the project, again, are going to be almost 5 miles of earthen embankment. It's going to be a very large levee system, a pump station to move water out of the main stem of the Brazos, with the biggest issue not being the volume of water that we're moving, but moving water without filling our reservoir up with sand. So that's going to be a tremendous challenge to us. And then getting the water in an acceptable fashion back into the river, environmentally protective and sound, either through one of the two different types of potential gates or spillways that you're looking at. The point I'm trying to make is that you have three very complex, major, large engineering issues that you have to look at, all in their own. They would be big projects just on their own. And then there's the whole issue of permitting. And to submit the permit to the Corps of Engineers, we have to be far enough along in our engineering and design that we can show the Corps exactly what we're going to have in place so they can begin to understand the impacts to the environment and the flow regimes of the Brazos. We've got to also study the flood impacts. We're going to be actually taking water out of the flood, out of the floodplain. We're going to be changing the floodplain, which is going to be a real big issue, and FEMA is going to be, and the Corps are going to be concerned about that. So there's just going to be a lot of challenges with the permitting and figuring out all of the impacts and how we're going to mitigate for those in our design and going forward. I've showed you this before. This is what the different phases look like. Phase 1 is an environmental assessment and 30% design. Phase 2 is the permitting approval process and public interaction. Now, what we don't have in Phase 1 is the public interaction that's already begun. The public interaction in Phase 2 is a defined process through the Corps of Engineers, where the Corps of Engineers they develop a stakeholders group of agencies and folks throughout the state and the United States, and they get input from those groups. So we've already started for a long time, been meeting with elected officials and county folks. We're on the verge of having a educational video come out in the next 30 to 45 days. It'll be on our webpage, and we'll make it available to you all and county officials, so we can really do rumor control and make sure that as we move forward and impact Austin County, that we're doing everything that we can do to control and manage the impacts. And then Phase 3 would be construction. If we could be in construction by 2021, 2022, that would be a really aggressive, successful timeline.
Archaeological relocation, do we know there are cemeteries or things like that?
There are multiple cemeteries, and there are also library. There is significant archaeological resources in the area that are going to have to be managed. It will be a significant undertaking.
That's tough.
Dave, what happens if we spend all this money and then we can't get it approved? I mean, is it just water down the drain, so to speak?
Well, the answer is yes. Hopefully we're taking. Hopefully, the position and the path that we're taking is that as we reach milestones with both the constructability of the reservoir in the area and the understanding of the artifacts and the environmental concerns that we won't wait till we get all the way to the end to know if we have a constructible project. Director Bell, to be honest with you, we could deliver the project to the core, and a more powerful political influence could take over and change our destiny. I guess that could happen. But the reality is, I think the steps that we're going to take along the way will help safeguard to where if we know that there's a deal killer in place, that we can come back to you and say, okay, we're cutting ties, and yeah, that's the money that we tried to invest, and it's money down the drain. But there's only the only way to determine that is to march forward in such a fashion. Yes, sir.
You know, I'm all for this project, always have been. It was supposed to have been started construction when I first came on the board, I think this year, but that didn't happen. My issue's always been, what guarantees do we have we're not going to get hung out to dry with the city of Houston? You know, they weren't for this. We were like pulling teeth early on, 2011, 2012. And so we're talking $86 million, of which they're responsible for 70%. What if they take that money and put it in inner city transportation?
Director, we're going to have an agreement in place to ensure that they're on the hook for paying for that. It's going to have to be contractually bound so we can move forward and make sure that we don't end up in such a position.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Whose regional water plan is this dam in? I mean, who's depending upon the water? Who's?
This is in Region H, and it's all of an overwhelming majority of the water is designated for the lower Brazos, the GCWA, Sugarland, that entire area.
So politically, this is how they're supposed to be providing water 50 years from now?
That's correct. This is a major. Go ahead. I'm
We
sorry.
need the water, is all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
You did. Yeah.
Yes.
The complexity of this is that Houston doesn't need water.
They don't.
And so we're trying to, so what if we come back to you and say, we need to take it all over? We need to buy it, which we have offered to do, and it didn't make any sense. But I think that could be it's being renegotiated or relooked at, and we'll keep that on the table to see, because like you say, y'all need the water.
Absolutely.
Somebody's got to do it.
Well, it impacts the whole system, though. I mean, it's water for everybody. We get to store more water upstream, which I think's.
You sure become, at times, you're sure going to be very more drought tolerant upstream. And 2011 is a great example. If we would have had the flexibility of Allen's Creek in 2011, things could have been different for sure. Director Bell?
With 100,000 acre feet, what's the revenue stream? What would we expect to generate from a sale of water? Anybody know?
Current system rate, about $7 million a year.
I'm sorry, say again?
The current system rate, about $7 million a year.
7 million?
Yes, sir.
But wouldn't we be putting this cost in computing a new system rate?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, when you look at that, here's what the money looks like. And again, this is still considering that Houston is a 70% owner. Should we get in a position, and that's what we're working toward, and we've had good conversations with the city of Houston about putting an agreement in place that secures their reimbursement of these funds. Looking at using $20 million in cash reserves for next year. And then with Stephen Adams, with Specialty Finance, Stephen, you guys know Stephen. Stephen's been around on the team for a long time. There are a lot of different options in working through the Water Development Board where you can push out principal payments and deferred interest, and we'll put together such a plan so that we can understand the rate impacts and what that financial package looks like. But you're looking at about $46 million between 2018 and 2021, and then the construction somewhere in the remainder. And again, we're still saying a $300 million project, and that number may change as we go forward.
When would we be computing a new system rate based upon this requirement, and what would that rate look like?
the long-range financial plan forecast that we've been showing you for probably the last 10 years have always contemplated Allen's Creek. And if you visualize in your mind, and I know maybe it's not as clear to you as it is to some of us, we show a very flat system rate out to about 2019, 2020, and then it starts kicking up pretty dramatically, and that is the impact of Allen's Creek. And of course, there's a lot of caveats in how that forecast looks.
30%.
Yes, sir.
But even if we were to find ourselves as a 100% shareholder, we would then have 100% of the water.
Sure.
So it would be proportional.
Is there historically, is there a project, has the BRA undertaken a project like this in the past, or is there one in the state that we can point to?
We've built reservoirs in the past, but we've never built reservoirs as a minority shareholder. We built Allen Henry, and I believe we finished that in '93, and then Limestone, I'm going to show you in a minute, it's about 37 years old. So we as an agency have a background, but not with a shareholder.
Is the permitting process generally the same for what we did for those previous projects?
The permitting is probably called the same as time has gone along. Permitting, and Tom, I mean, you can help me out here. The permitting is exponentially more complicated now than it's ever been, and it goes probably without saying that it would be exponentially more complicated in 10 years than it would be today.
And population and politics plays a big role.
David, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How on earth does the engineering firm come up with $86 million? I mean, why is it not 85 or 87? How can you sit here and think about what I'm going to be paying engineers 6 or 7 years down the road in order to get this work done? It just seems to me like if I were sitting on the other side of this contract, I'd have to pad it pretty hard.
They do have to manage that risk. But Director Rankin, we've also pushed them in a direction to give us a not exceed to amount, so we're not giving them a blank checkbook.
Well, I understand that, but if you take some of that risk away from them, they might be able to pass some of those savings on to you. If, in other words, if you had a contract that was a shorter duration, it's pretty hard to sit here and say what you're going to be doing in 2025.
That's correct.
You know, so it just seems like we're committing, and like I said, if I were this contract, any other, I don't know anything about, but it just, when you're laying a contract that far out into the future, and then it's got not to exceed, and you're a big national responsible whatever firm, you're going to leave yourself, I'd leave myself a little breathing room.
Please.
But aren't we assuming one of the reasons they're being chosen is their experience?
Oh,
that this isn't their first one. So
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the length. In other words, instead of a contract that goes all the way to 2025, what if you had a contract that went a shorter duration, and then the next years would be negotiated? Then they wouldn't, maybe their costs don't go up as much as they have them anticipated in this.
I don't disagree. The longer the time, the more difficult. But I did want to point out one thing that we do. When we do these not to exceeds, because you raised the issue about padding and putting some comfort level into it for the contractor, they have done that. But part of what they have to do also is, as they're billing, as time goes, we're looking at the actual hours. The not to exceed is the maximum of what it's going to be for those tasks, but they're still accountable to us to record hours. Now, we haven't finalized negotiations on this contract, but generally that's what we do. So the engineering firm will come back in and true up the number of hours they've worked, and oftentimes where they've put in, let's say they put in $100,000 for a given task, they're accruing hours as against that task, and it may be $80,000, not $100,000. And then in that instance, they would bill us for those hours that were actually accrued, not the total amount. So you have to look at, I think, the not to exceed as the outer boundary of what the cost would be of the contract. I think in reality, it may well come come in substantively less than that. I don't want to, say that, because at the end of the day, who knows? But that's kind of what we look at. And what our folks are going to have to do is when the invoices come in, we have to look at those invoices and we have to true them up as against the number of hours that they've expended on those tasks. So, I just want to make it clear that we understand, I think, David, and the folks are here, that the firm that's being contemplated maybe can speak to it. But as they go in and give us the numbers, they've built in, I don't want to say a cushion, but they've put in a safety net for what they legitimately believe this not to exceed is. But that doesn't mean that we're obliged to pay the not to exceed on each tasking. Gentlemen, is that a fair statement of how you envision our discussions? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, David, it sounds like this contract with Houston is a big piece that's left out. Can you give us what stage are y'all at right now with trying to get some formal agreement with Houston?
We are drafting an amendment to send to Houston, and the complexity of that amendment, pardon me, is that when the original agreements were signed back in the early 2000s, it was really contemplated, as Director Masterson said, that we would move right into construction. So we're having to verify what has been done and what hasn't been done, and we're trying to also put Houston in a situation where they can be successful. And we're so long story short, we're still drafting that agreement and hope to have it to Houston soon for them to consider. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess, soon, is that 6 months? Is that within the year?
Oh, no. The reason that we're coming to you now is because we would like to have that to Houston before the next board meeting. The timing issue is this seemed to be the right time based on you all meeting in a quarterly schedule to allow us the flexibility to move forward sooner than later.
We're going.
This require Houston to issue a bond election?
Or
they would have to figure out how they want to fund it, whether going through the Water Development Board or issuing debt. We're trying to structure an agreement that allows them the flexibility to pay us back once we start construction. So they would have some time to figure that out. But that would certainly be an option.
But as I understand it, we would be fronting the bill.
That's right.
And they would reimburse us along on the project.
That's correct. That's the plan.
Yeah. So we have to come up with the money initially and collect it from them.
Yes.
Have they hinted that they might take less of a role?
In our discussions with Houston, I think they've acknowledged that Allen's Creek today is not as important as a water supply to them as it was maybe 10 years ago. They've been beneficial with their Loose Bayou project and other projects that have allowed them some flexibility. They've done a really good job in managing their water futures.
But have we indicated to them that we might be willing to take more of the project?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. They know that we would take 100% today. Director Bennis?
Does our agreement currently have any financial benefit to us for funding their portions? In other words, do we get compensated for interest or 10% more of the project if we have to carry?
Well, the agreement in place doesn't contemplate that. Whatever monies that we would spend plus interest, if they continue to be a shareholder, they would have to reimburse us for that. They'd have to make us 100% whole.
Okay.
That's the agreement that we're going to put together.
Sites available in the states? I'm just looking outside our thing. I mean, they're hard to get politically to have a acreage to do another reservoir. Are there any others in the state that are in the planning stage that have been? We have some squatters here or anything like that, or people living there or that we don't know about?
On our reservoir site?
Yes.
No, we don't have any squatters on our reservoir site. We, and the only reason I'm chuckling is because we grew some marijuana on it. We actively manage that, Director Sacanino, and we have farmers that raise cattle and do corn, grow corn, and we're very in touch with those folks, and they know what our plans are, and Our commitment to them is to let them know years in advance when they need to have vacated and be out, so they don't,
Right.
buy corn seed and futures on ammonia and those type things. And
Because, this is difficult to get a reservoir site in the state of Texas to do any future reservoirs.
the opportunity that we have in front of us is very unique because we already have the water permit, we already have the reservoir site, and we're really one step away, which is very complicated, the 404 permitting, from having a construction-ready reservoir site. So it's a unique opportunity. If we move forward, it'll be a multi-year project before we ever get to groundbreaking, and there'll be a lot of interaction with the board and a lot of challenges ahead of us. Director Jones?
Yes, Region H looked at some other sites for reservoirs, but this one it seems to be in the best place because it's down in the lower part of the Brazos. They looked at an extra place to Lake Milliken, and they looked at the little Brazos River for other sites.
But in those things, you have to
it was a
get
bunch
people
of,
out of the area.
Yes, there were people and environmental issues that caused them to say not those. And so this one is the best one. It was the lowest one that collect waters before it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is really a fantastic place, but it has some issues, just like every place that you try to put a reservoir, people don't want it because it's going to make something different from where they have had in the past. But we should support this one as much as we can, and we can buy it. We should buy it. We can.
Did I understand you to say that we financially could go ahead with the project without Houston being involved in it?
Well, we could. I'm not so sure that that's the smart step to take without an agreement in place with Houston to make sure a city that is struggling with financial issues to move forward in such a fashion that we don't have an ironclad four-cornered contract that makes sure that we get reimbursed.
Well, what if they didn't? What if they decided they didn't want to participate? Can we, as an entity, go ahead and build the lake financially?
If they decide they don't want to participate, then BRA, we will come to you very aggressively to move forward as 100% owner moving forward with the project. Absolutely.
Okay.
And if your question is, do we have the ability to get the money? I think with our relationship with the Water Development Board and the aggressiveness that the Water Development Board is trying to take with SWIFT funding, I don't think we'd have any problem borrowing the money from the Water Development Board to move forward with the project.
The state's got to do something. We got to produce some water.
I understand that, but I'm trying to put we got to do this. But I'm just trying to get the scope around it, and I can't really relate to big dollars. I have to break it down to an acre foot. Now, if I got my zeros right, it's going to cost you $3,000 to have an acre foot of water that you will have not every year, but in better times, right?
My understanding is that 100,000 acre feet of water is available farm yield every year.
Okay, so we're going to have that.
Yes.
So, we're selling water over here for what's the rate right now?
$70.
Yeah, $70. Now, I'm in the water business. I'm going to pay $3,000 for something that's going to give me an acre foot every year going forward, 1 acre foot. But I'm paying $3,000. I can't amortize that or come anywhere near amortizing that with $70. I'm not sure I can do it with $150 or,
But
what kind of, if it were a private, we're selling stock in this business and we're going to invest $3,000 for this acre foot, what would we as shareholders think we needed to be able to sell that acre foot for in order to have a chance of amortizing our debt?
And with all due respect, so that if you take the price and you divide it only by 1 year's worth of yield, it gets your number.
I know. I'm not saying that. I'm
Water
saying
rights
you can sell that acre foot every year for the rest of your life, okay? And it goes on forever. But you still paid $3,000 up front for it, and you're going to pay an interest rate on that, which, if we were financing it right now, Stephen said, oh, yeah, now's the time. But somewhere down the line, you don't know how much it's going to cost you. So, what's it going to cost?
We
4%, 5%?
We expect that the amortized cost of this water, when you use some of the funding tools that we have available to us from the Water Development Board, will be in the $145 to $160 per acre foot range.
What's the LCR rate right now?
$150 for take water. And then that cost then further, because we have a system, and we currently have about 400,000 acre feet of units being sold under that system rate. You take that $150 to $160 an acre foot amortized cost for this project, and you don't just divide it by 100,000 acre feet. You divide it now by 500,000 acre feet.
Well,
And you
what you're
blend it
saying
into
is
it's
the
a
whole
posted
system, the existing system supplements this. If you
always-
look at it just totally on a marginal basis,
right?
It is a rather high cost.
There will never be any less expensive water options available to any water provider in this state.
So you've answered my question, but do you see why I ask it?
I understand. Yes, sir.
It's like this is not a we just did $20,000 to get out information. This is like a big dollar amount.
And we talked earlier, and David mentioned it, the last reservoir we built was Lake Limestone, and that was almost 40 years ago. And we've gone through 4 decades without
What's the
adding.
cost on that?
A lot less
It's not
than this.
relevant by now anyway.
It was a lot lower per acre foot than this was.
Yeah.
But we've gone 4 decades without adding a drop of water to our supplies.
Yeah.
The math works, and this is part of our mission. I mean,
I'm going to vote yes. I just want to.
That's a good point.
Talk about it a minute.
All right,
$86 million.
David, do you have a resolution?
$300 million.
Yes, sir. Can I make sure I answer Director Bell's question?
Sure.
If your question was, if Houston comes to the table and says, no, can we go forward? We would probably need to go to the legislature because Houston is a 70% permit holder on that reservoir and take action that way. If they said, no, we're not giving you any more, no, we're not going to do anything, this project just can't move forward. That's how I'd answer that question.
I would also have the concern that they say yes with great intentions, but then when it comes time to write a check, they're like, well, we're running a little tight this year. I mean, you have to have some way of making sure that they can honor they've already made a lot of promises to firemen and police officers that they're going to have a hard time honoring. So what makes you think they're going to honor one to BRA?
Director Masterson, did you have a question?
Yeah, but, okay, looking down the road, Jim keep talking about 100,000 acres, but we only have 30% of that, the BRA.
Today, and the associated 30% of the project.
Yeah, I mean, 100,000 acre feet per year, but Houston gets 70,000 acre feet, right?
If they pay for it.
Huh?
If they pay for it.
Well, you're sitting here telling me they're going to be our partners, so we're going to pay for it. So they get 70% of that 100,000 acre feet, right? Are they going to be tied to the same system rate that we are?
No. They're going to have to figure out what rate they want to sell that water for, and my guess is it would be much more expensive than our system.
And making it undoable.
And that is part of the challenge that the city is.
So when our 30% can be at $70 and Houston's 70% can be at $200.
The market.
Absolutely. It's their debt, it's their expense, their water.
If my information is correct, and it may not be, the Abengoa project where they're going to ship water from Burleson County down to San Antonio, projected to be $1,600 an acre foot. How much? 2,300 an acre foot. So it's a lot of money too. It still has to be done.
It sounds cheaper when you get thirsty.
David, I was just going to say, it is a big number. I appreciate Bill making his comments, but I know a lot of us have talked about this a lot as well over the years. There's just not another place we can get water. It isn't a huge piece of water for us, but it's water. And we own the property already. I think it's worth noting, the impound area. And but I do think we need to underwrite the city of Houston from a financial standpoint, and we need to know what their unfunded liabilities are on their financial statement today, and how they've been, how they're being presented, because they're a gigantic municipality with a huge amount of potential liability out there. I don't know that number, but it's one of those types of municipalities in our country where, with the new accounting rules, seeing those unfunded liabilities could really scare us a little bit if they're not managing that properly. And I want to believe that they are, and they've been addressing it. But we still need to do the underwriting on our partner from a financial standpoint. So,
should we have an agreement with Houston before we make an agreement with this amount of money? What's our back out?
That's our intention, and that's in the resolution. That's in our intention. Our intention is to have that agreement with Houston inked before we ink the agreement with MWH Americas.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Read the resolution.
Yes, sir.
Final thing, in the resolution, it says Houston's intent. Well, I've had a lot of great intentions in my life. Without the ability, the intent is sort of meaningless. And I don't know how we go about having some way of having a good feeling that they are going to honor the obligation, whether they make it or not. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Didn't Sugar Land Rodenberg try to bail them out?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Maybe I dreamed that.
I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Being resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract with MWH Americas, Inc. for all activities associated with permitting, engineering, and design of the Allens Creek Reservoir project in an amount not to exceed $86,002,318. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager to negotiate and execute an amendment to the existing agreement to the document the City of Houston's intent to reimburse the Brazos River Authority for 70% of the project costs associated with Allens Creek project. And be it further resolved that the work under the MWH Americas, Inc. contract, including any payments therefor, shall not commence until such time as the Brazos River Authority and the City of Houston have executed an aforementioned amendment to their existing agreements.
You've heard the resolution. Is motion to adopt. Tallis, second. Kilgore, please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Venice,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes. Yes.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to break for lunch. How much time, Phil?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. All right, everybody take their seat. We'll continue. We'll start.
For
discussion and possible action on contract amendment with NRG by David Collingsworth.
Mr. Chairman, this is a unique opportunity. For the last year or so, we've been talking with NRG, one of our largest customers, and they have an opportunity through one of their old water contracts to provide water to to other folks in the region, and it all stemmed from some of the troubled times of 2011. And basically, what it amounts to is NRG and Gulf Coast Water Authority have been talking about the opportunity for Gulf Coast to take some of the water that they have under contract but not using and make it available to Gulf Coast Water Authority on short-term contracts so that Gulf Coast can limp through dry periods until we have something like an Allen's Creek available for them. NRG's existing contract is an old contract. They have about 83,000 acre feet of water, and they use about 50,000 acre feet of water. That contract contemplates their ability to resell that water. It also contemplates their ability to change their diversion points. For them to do a deal with the Gulf Coast Water Authority to sell the water to them, they would have to also change some of the language that's in that contract that relates to the diversion rates. So that's one of the things that we wanted to consider, allowing them to do that so that they could assist Gulf Coast Water Authority. One of the issues with this is years ago, the BRA board put into place some water policy that says if you're going to amend your contract, you're going to have to convert to system rate. NRG did, with their limestone contract, convert to system rate. However, this contract, because it already contemplates the different diversion points and it also already contemplates them selling the water, we don't think that policy is appropriate for an amendment to this contract. If NRG were to sell some of the water short term to Gulf Coast, they would sell it at system rate, and then we would get half of the proceeds for that water. So there's a financial benefit into it to the BRA for it, but there's also just the customer service benefit of helping GCWA and NRG. So, any questions?
How long is the NRG contract?
It expires in 2030, Director Johnson.
Okay. So,
2030.
and so if they, we won't. But if they do this selling, it would benefit us because that part of it would revert to system rate?
No, none of it would revert to system rate.
Oh, I missed what you said, the last thing you were talking about then. How does it benefit us?
It benefits us because if they sell the water at system rate to GCWA, we get half those proceeds.
Okay.
So there's 25,000.
Of what they sell to GCWA.
They got the 25,000 acre feet.
Okay, we said the same thing. All right.
A portion.
I do understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions? Read the resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to amend the 1972 NRG water supply contract to add additional pumping points, increase the maximum diversion rate, and update language-specific parties to the contract, and make other changes to update or remove obsolete provisions.
You've heard the resolutions, a motion to adopt. Smith? Whoop.
I have a question. We're authorizing this, and of course, we'll be informed of what those options are as we go along.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
I had Smith and Edward Rick. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Bennis?
Yes.
Director Bowles?
Yes.
Director Christensen? Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Flores?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes. Agenda item number 12, Discussion and possible action on Lake Limestone Tanner Gate engineering contract by David Collingsworth.
About a year ago, we came to the board and got approval for $2 million to start the evaluation of 5 or 6 different activities at Lake Limestone. And these activities are just pay me now or pay me later type things with a dam that's approaching 40 years old. We prioritized the activities that need to take place. And as promised, we would come back to you at different intervals to get funding to proceed with different individual projects. The highest priority project at Lake Limestone is rehab of the Tanner gates that lift to allow the water to come through. We have 5 at Lake Limestone, and on the back side of these Tanner gates, on the reservoir side, there's just 37 years of wear and tear, quite frankly. So what we're looking for today is to move forward with the design and engineering at about $1.9 million. That'll put us in a place, hopefully in the next year, to come back with a construction contract to start rehabbing the Tanner gates on the dam. That's what they look like. That's what Lake Limestone has frequently looked about like in the last few months. The money, the design phase, about $600,000. Construction phase services will be about $1.1 million. We're looking for $1.9 million for design and engineering, and that'll take us to construction in about a year. Any questions?
Yep. Read your resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a contract with Arcadis U.S. for the engineering and design of the Tanner Gate repairs and improvements for a long-term protection and enhancement of the Sterling C. Robertson Dam in an amount not to exceed $1,926,000.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Mr. Munson? Richard, please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Bowles?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Abstain.
Director Flores? Yes. Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Powell?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Abstain.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Zanganino?
Yes.
Agenda item number 13, discussion and possible action on interlocal agreement with Texas Water Development Board for groundwater availability model. Model update by Brad Brunette, Water Service Manager.
Yes, sir. This item has to do with, again, groundwater availability models, and y'all have heard us talk in the past a lot about surface water availability models that we use to calculate the yield of our reservoirs that are used in surface water permitting with our system operations permit. But the counterpart to those models are groundwater availability models that are used by groundwater districts to regulate groundwater within their respective areas. And the Texas Water Development Board is the agency that oversees those official groundwater availability models. So they periodically go through and have them updated. And right now, the Water Development Board is under contract with Interra, which is an engineering company, to update the central portion of the Queen City, Sparta, and Carrizo-Wilcox aquifers groundwater availability model. And those aquifers span over a large swath of the state of Texas, including a big part of the lower Brazos Basin. One area of improvement that's needed for some of the GAMs, including this one, is the ability to model the interaction of groundwater with surface water better than they're currently capable of. Again, there's that area where the outcrops of the aquifers are at the surface of the ground. And for the most part, the current groundwater models aren't really capable of evaluating in high detail what's happening at that interface with regard to water going into the ground from rivers and from the surface of the land, as well as, discharges from springs back into the rivers whenever it's wet. And for us as a river authority, especially with regard to our reservoir releases for our customers downstream when it's dry, it's important that we understand as much as we can about what's happening within those river channels as we're releasing water downstream. Are we losing some of the water that we're releasing for customers going into the aquifer? And then during wet times, how much water may the aquifer be discharging back to the streams? In addition to the Water Development Board, who is currently under contract and funding most of this GAM update, there are other entities, including some of the groundwater districts as well as the LCRA, that are participating financially to help improve the capability of the model to evaluate that interaction between the groundwater and the surface water. Basically, I've got a map here that kind of shows you where the aquifer is that we're talking about. You can see up at the top is the Lake Limestone area, and down at the bottom is Rockdale. And that green area is where that aquifer outcrops across the Brazos Basin. And those yellow lines are the Brazos River and tributaries that are built into the model. And those are the areas where they're going to be basically reducing the grid cell size in the model underneath those streams to better evaluate what's going on with regard to that interaction. If you think about it as an underground Rubik's Cube, the models have this mesh or grid network where they're doing calculations in each cell of the grid to figure out water that's moving into and out of each cell. And right now, those grid cells are too large to accurately model what's going on a relatively small basis. And so that's what the interlocal agreement that we would be recommending to you would be, to provide funding to reduce the size of those grid cells so that model is better capable of evaluating what's going on with that groundwater surface water interaction going forward. It's not going to be the be-all, end-all solution. There's still going to be a lot of work, and it's something that not just BRA, but the state, I think, is going to be looking at a lot closer moving forward. We've heard a lot, we talk a lot about surface water, and we talk a lot about groundwater, but they're really connected, and that's one of the things that is missing right now from some of the models. What we're recommending is an interlocal agreement where we would provide $20,000 through the Texas Water Development Board to help fund this effort, with $10,000 being provided in this year and then $10,000 again in 2017. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can read the resolution.
Report or information that would be publicly available?
Yes, sir.
On this issue?
Yes, sir. The models, as well as the report documenting the models, are available on the Water Development Board's website. And again, groundwater districts, river authorities, engineering consultants, those models are accessible to anyone free of charge to be able to use them to, evaluate whatever project that they're working on.
Okay. Any more questions? Read the resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager/CEO to execute an interlocal agreement with the Texas Water Development Board, under which the BRA will provide funding in an amount not to exceed $20,000 to refine and improve the capability of the central portion of the Queen City, Sparta, and Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer groundwater availability model to simulate groundwater and surface water interaction within the Brazos Basin.
You've heard the resolution, motion to adopt. Flores, Rick, please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Bennis?
Yes.
Director Bowles?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Flores? Yes. Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Towles?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes.
Agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action on freshwater mussel rapid risk assessment by Tiffany Morgan, Environmental Service Manager.
Good afternoon. I'm here to ask to accelerate a project we had planned for 2017. We have a pending endangered species issue in the basin that at this time we don't know if it would be a minor hurdle for us or become a major mountain as a water supplier. This project's goal is to try to wrap our heads around that. Due to some accelerations in the schedule by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, is the primary reason why I'm here asking to accelerate a little bit ahead of schedule so that we can stay out in front of it. The freshwater mussels, you heard David speak earlier about zebra mussels. Just to make a good idea, this little circle in yellow is a zebra mussel on top of a freshwater mussel. Freshwater mussels are native mussels. They are not invasive. They're naturally occurring. Some of their prime differences from zebra mussels, they are not the prolific breeders that zebra mussels are, so their populations are much smaller. They are dependent on riverine fish or reservoir fish for a stage of their reproductive cycle. They generally prefer soft substrate, so you'll find them in your clays, your muds, your sands, versus the zebra mussels, which David showed you ample examples of them growing on hard structures. So just to give you an idea, we are talking about native species. Right now, the Fish and Wildlife is working on 12 species in the state of Texas that are all freshwater mussels. They've grouped them into 4 listing packages. Right now, they're working on the Rio Grande package, and that's the package that has accelerated greatly. They have stated their intent afterwards is the Central Texas package, which unfortunately affects us. 2 key things that we're hoping to address is that right now, lack of distribution information is considered a negative. We've seen that through the Rio Grande. If they don't know if mussels are there or there, they assume that's a bad thing. And that impacts the species risk and imperiled status. And so it's really imperative for us, A, to know where they're at. These are the 2 species that right now we are being impacted by, the smooth pimpleback and the Texas fawn's foot. Unfortunately, through a TxDOT project in the San Gabriel River, we now have to contend with the false spike. The false spike was previously thought to be extinct. But due to some bridge relocations, they have now found them in the Colorado Basin, in the San Saba River, and in the San Gabriel River in our basin. So that's another species out there pending. This is just a map showing you the distribution of the different types. Smooth pimpleback, we have fairly wide distribution across the basin. Fawn's foot primarily in the lower portion of the basin, and that's where they found that false spike. What you'll notice is the Navasota really hasn't had much assessment, and neither has the upper basin below our reservoirs. So that's one of the things we want to look at as we move forward. Like I said, U.S. Fish and Wildlife is working on the Texas hornshell right now, which is going to give us probably a pretty good indicator of how our mussels will be viewed. Right now, the tone of the species status assessment, which is the next step before they determine whether to list the species as endangered or not, indicates to me that they're probably going to go with an imperiled and endangered decision on those mussels in the Rio Grande. And they have indicated that critical habitat will be specified for those mussels and all mussels that they consider throughout, which gives them a bigger hook into, after the listing, being able to control and protect those species. In the past, they used to list them as endangered, and then the critical habitat listing was an option. They've stated for all these mussels, they will push forward with declaring critical habitat. Some of the unknowns that haven't been addressed in the Rio Grande package that we don't know, but we hope to wrap our heads around, is how will the Senate Bill 3 in-stream flow standards factor into it? There was no mention of that in the species status assessment in the Rio Grande. Those should be protective and improve survivability of endangered mussels. How much impact will projects on the regional plans have to their determination of an imperiled status? They played a very strong role in the Rio Grande species status assessment. A new reservoir project was considered an imminent threat. The other question that's not answered, and we've asked and not really gotten much of an answer, is generally you have to have a federal nexus for those, which means you take money. We don't know what they're going to do with our core reservoirs, and are those going to be considered a federal nexus? Our BRA lakes, too. There have been issues in other states where people have had to flow water at times to help support nothing more than this survivability of mussels. So trying to grasp what is our real risk if these things become endangered. Right now, the anticipated listing schedule for our mussels, they have accelerated the Texas hornshell and are now going to finish, hopefully, or they say in September 2016. That's about a year ahead of schedule. We anticipate they'll probably take a break to deal with the fall spike to add it to the Central Texas Mussel Group. And that should take about a year, and we are estimating that we'll have a final decision on the Central Texas Mussel Group from U.S. Fish and Wildlife by early 2019. What we're proposing in a rapid risk assessment is to really understand what does an endangered listing of those mussels mean to the BRA. Try to identify and characterize, do we have mussels below our reservoirs in the Navasota and the Brazos River between Possum Kingdom and Waco that we could potentially impact? Understand the potential impacts. What does that mean to Brad and his operations and his ability to move water around the basin as he needs to? And if there are operational impacts, what does that mean to us financially? And then try to identify options for mitigating those impacts. There are several permitting opportunities available. What we'll plan to do at the conclusion of this project is probably bring a list of options back to you and cost estimates. They range from a minor permit to some major projects as far as our options to protect us from an endangered listing. We're going to work with the Texas A&M Institute of Renewable Natural Resources. They not only have malacologists, which are mussel specialists on staff that can survey our streams, but they also specialize in trying to do outreach efforts in policy areas and bring collaboration to the table and work with Fish and Wildlife. They have experience doing that to try to feel them out, negotiate what we can and can't do, and get a better idea for what those impacts will be to us if they are endangered. I'd say it's highly likely at least 2 of the 3 species in our basin will probably be endangered. So, I have a resolution, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, I'd like to know why we want to help this. This sounds like to me this would be an impediment to everything that we're doing.
We're trying to get ahead of it so that we understand what it absolutely could be an impediment, but it's an impediment if we let it happen. We have no control over the process. If we can assess our basin and figure out, A, that we have some more mussels, that makes it stronger that those mussels aren't endangered. The more populations you find, the less likely they will be considered to be imperiled. Also, we want to, if there's a chance, if we can get in ahead of the schedule and negotiate a candidate conservation agreement with assurances. That's essentially an agreement with Fish and Wildlife. Hopefully our existing operations are already such that they are reasonably protective of the mussels. Brad's usually flowing water in periods of low flow. We have Senate Bill 3 in-stream flow requirements that we're going to be required to meet. Hopefully we can go in and through our base operations secure that CCAA permit, which then protects us after the fact if those mussels get listed as endangered.
How?
It's an agreement with us and Fish and Wildlife that we will commit to certain conservation strategies. Like I said, hopefully what we're already doing will be sufficient for that. Mm-hmm. And then through that permit opportunity in that agreement, they can't come back. That is part of their federal permit process after the fact if they list them as endangered and change that agreement, if we can qualify for it. Our other options would be if we wait till after the fact, we'd probably have to try to get an incidental take permit with a habitat conservation agreement, which those can be rather burdensome and expensive to pursue, but that would then protect us from, if we have a bad drought and dry up the Navasota River and kill endangered mussels, they can come after us for a take of an endangered species under federal regulations. So it's trying to set up and analyze what are our options, what would be the best option to protect the BRA going forward from this potential listing.
Okay.
This is a defensive move then, is what it is?
Pretty much.
Will it cost that much money?
The mussels, it depends on the species.
They don't have a date.
Usually about yay big.
we gonna get the data.
Found them for years in the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and they are used by wildlife as a food supply.
But on the bad mussels, the one.
The zebra mussel.
The zebra mussels.
Yeah.
No, they're not protected.
Prey or no host that'll.
They won't protect them.
No,
Knock them in the head.
we have not found a sufficient predator for zebra mussels yet.
Oh, okay. So it's.
They are.
I understand exactly what you're doing. I mean,
I do too.
we have these. I mean, they're after our salamanders, which are just they're shooting out of our springs everywhere right now. They listed them as
there.
Endangered?
yes, they listed them as endangered, and it's. I mean, it just it makes no rhyme or reason. Their motives don't.
That's what I'm thinking.
The mission of their agency doesn't seem to be benefiting by what they're trying to do. So, I mean, this is just.
Why should we help them?
Well, because that law is written so broadly.
It is the most powerful piece of environmental legislation that there is, and it has almost universally won in federal court.
And so then at those levels, they're successful. At the very least, they delay your projects for perpetuity.
Yeah.
And it's it's a horrible situation that needs to be dealt with at a federal level. This is just horrible overreach. Protect yourself best you can, because they're not going to stop.
That's what we're trying to do. We're not really trying to assist U.S. Fish and Wildlife in any way, shape, or form. We're trying to figure out what we need to do to protect the BRA's operations and our financial stability. Talking to some of the wildlife specialists in Georgia for the state of Georgia who've been dealing with this a lot longer, they said the mussels really don't impact their day-to-day operations until they reach a period of drought. Then it becomes a problem for them. Whether we can use that as a good guidepost or not, I don't know, because we're a lot drier than Georgia is. They are also involved in several interstate compacts for water supply between Florida, Alabama, Georgia. Said when they get into periods of drought, that relationship becomes very contentious because of the endangered species issues, because all three states have endangered mussels. So all we're trying to do here is try to get a handle on what could this mean for us, and is there a way for us to try to protect the BRA's operations?
Because when you have to tell Lake Whitney that you're releasing flow to save mussels downstream, that's going to be a PR nightmare.
Oh.
Which, I mean, and that's what they're going to put you in position to do.
And it's a very real potential in our future if these critters become endangered.
And do they have the data already to declare them endangered, or would this assist them in that?
They will use whatever data they have available.
Okay.
It's not always good.
So
And
it
it's
will
limited.
become, the more data we can provide them to try to prove that we have ample and sufficient populations and that they're not imperiled, the better. They will look at lack of data. They will just take what they have. So if they have one person went out, I didn't see them. Okay, they're endangered. Now they are in the process of stiffening that process up to make it more difficult, but we're not quite there yet. So the more data we can provide, we're fortunate the smooth pimpleback is also in the Colorado Basin. They're doing some similar studies. So between the two of us, that might be one that we have a chance of not having listed as endangered. Fawn's foot's pretty rare. I'm going to guess he's going to be endangered. The false spike, only known in 2 rivers in Texas in 2 places. He meets right now the current requirements for the endangered species listing. So trying to figure out what, through existing Fish and Wildlife Service permitting options, we can begin to do now, hopefully ahead of the listing that would protect us, or at least be aware of what's coming at us and what are our options. Do we have to wait till they're listed? That puts us in a much less advantageous negotiating platform.
It's difficult.
Your resolution says not to exceed 50,000. Is there any chance it would be less than that?
That's just for this year. It's actually the overall for the study would be 425,000.
Whoa.
Who does the stuff?
It will be the group out of A&M, the Institute for Renewable Natural Resources. About half of that is the stream surveys of the Navasota and the Brazos from Waco to PK. Right now, we have very little knowledge of what's downstream of our own reservoirs. That requires essentially scuba diving of those segments.
I think that's cheap.
Looking for
what they can do to us.
For it, and the other half would be for assessing our operations. They'll come in, they're going to work with Brad's staff. How do we operate things? The water management plan we developed through SysOp should be a positive. Look at Senate Bill 3 rules. Start some initial outreach with Fish and Wildlife Service of what do they need to see in a CCAA agreement that would be the most protective thing that we can get ahead of time. Try to start feeling them out about what the expenses would be on the different permitting options that we'd have available.
Like the one that was a false mussel was in that one spot? Would they limit it to that tributary of the Brazos?
That fall spike, it was only, so far it's only been found in 2 locations in the state. It was in the San Gabriel.
But I mean, would they limit it to a certain reach? Or would they just go in and say, okay, we found it in this one spot and now we're going to list
Hopefully they would.
All the way down?
They have the ability to. I think that would be unlikely because they are so limited. I would hope that they would limit it just to the San Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's in one of our highest water need areas. So anything that restricts the needs and the abilities to move water around Williamson County and Milam County could be detrimental to us. Smooth pimpleback, I think that one's our best chance for maybe not having endangered. The false, let me go back to that map. Where the fawn's foot is too, and there's smooth pimpleback mixed in here. They just kind of overlap on top of each other. That's right where Allen's Creek is fixing to go too. So it has a potential to impact our new reservoir. So hopefully by doing this, we can protect our operations moving forward.
You want to read the resolution, please?
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes and approves amending the fiscal year 2016 budget in an amount not to exceed $50,000 to accelerate work on the freshwater mussel rapid risk assessment. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Texas A&M Institute of Renewable Natural Resources, IRNR, for a 2.5-year project for an amount not to exceed $425,000, which includes limiting the indirect cost rate to 28% to perform risk analysis for the freshwater mussel rapid risk assessment project.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
Moved.
Rick, second?
Second.
Yeah. Got him. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Abstain.
Director Ball?
No.
Director Bell?
No.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Bowles?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Flores?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
No.
Either be proactive
Director
or
Kilgore?
reactive.
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director White?
Yes.
Director Sandino?
Yes.
Agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action, report for environmental flow initiative related to the water management plan by Tiffany Morgan, environmental service manager.
This contract that I'm asking permission for you to approve essentially replaces an existing contract. Our contractor underwent a substantial change in management about 18 months ago, and since that time, all of the staff that we hired that firm for has chosen to seek employment elsewhere. So we're kind of left with a contract right now that is not very functional for us, and we have indicated to them that we are not going to continue. Most of the work under this contract is all work that we committed to voluntarily through the system operations project and with our memorandum of understanding we negotiated with Texas Parks and Wildlife as part of that. It's also something that will be very beneficial in the future to Senate Bill 3 revisions, because right now, while the Senate Bill 3 required development of in-stream flow study standards or in-stream flow standards, there's very little data, and I know this because I was on the science team that generated it, so a lot of this work will be generating data to better inform that process. Right now, we were using best available science, which in a lot of places meant making a scientific wag. This project has been included in the budget since the beginning of the since 2011 and is currently contemplated in the long-term system operations project budget. Tasks under the contract will include assisting environmental services staff with conducting the in-stream environmental flow studies, post-assessment and data processing, developing some methods reporting documents, environmental flow achievement analysis, WMP permitting support as needed as we go through the rest of the system operations process and hopefully through the 10-year mandatory revision of the WMP, and then through the next round of Senate Bill 3 environmental flows coordination. This will be a phase contract. The first phase is for 5 years. Phase 2 will require authorization and amendment prior to commencing work. So if something changes between now and then, and we no longer need some of the services, we'll have the opportunity at the end of 2020 to amend the contract accordingly. The total project budget for the 10-year project is $1,625,000. These are the sites currently in the contract that agreed to be assessed, and these are the sites that we have committed to assessing through the system operations process. The contract does not limit us to those sites only. It is flexible enough that if we experience some change in the next 10 years, we can adjust the contract as needed. Any questions?
You only received one proposal?
We only received one proposal. I offered it out to, well, Loopy put it out on the internet, so anyone who wanted to see it could bid on it, but we specifically sent it to 6 firms that I thought had staff that were qualified to do this sort of work. 4 of those 6 combined to create the Aqua Strategies team. One of the other firms I thought would have adequate staff is the firm working on the environmental permitting for Allen's Creek, and they'd indicated that because of the scope of that project, they just didn't have the man hours available to bid on this project.
Wait a minute, they combined, the 4 combined?
4 team, there's 4
4
under Aqua Strategies.
Were they aware then that they were the only bidder?
Not at the time that they did it. I'm sure they may have suspected, since I'm sure they all know each other's capabilities, but there was certainly a chance that SWCA would have put in for this contract too. I think they combined to cover all the potential needs that we might have. Some are stronger with biologists, some are stronger with engineers, some have some good hydrologists on staff, and the 4 groups went together to create a team response. Will we use necessarily all the capabilities of all 4 teams? Probably not. But we're covered if we need some of their particular skill sets.
Any more questions?
Yes, sir.
Have the 4 firms submitted this as a joint venture project, or have they formed a new firm?
No, they submitted as a joint venture project with Aqua Strategies being the primary contractor, with 3 subcontractors available underneath Aqua Strategies.
Anybody else? Will you please read the resolution?
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into a contract with Aqua Strategies Incorporated for a 10-year project for an amount not to exceed $1,625,000 for support for environmental flow initiatives related to the System Operation Permit and Water Management Plan.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Rick? Second?
Second.
Master Munson? Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Bowles,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Flores, Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
No.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director White,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Agenda item number 16, report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2017 strategic plan and financial forecast by Jim Forte. And
David
David
Thompson and I are going to tag team this one. In the materials, the backup materials that you received, there were two documents. One was a resolution adopted on March 19th, 2007 by the board that adopted our strategic plan at that time. And then behind that, there was a document that actually is the proposed strategic plan that we've been working on. When the Legislative Budget Board and the State Auditor's Office looked at BRA about a little over a year ago, the LBB mentioned that they couldn't find a specific connection between the two documents, our strategic plan, long-range financial plan. We don't necessarily agree with that, but we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to go back and look at our strategic plan and the goals and objectives that we have within it and see if they were still consistent. Of course, in the water industry, where you measure your progress in decades, it's kind of hard to see goals and objectives change dramatically. But we have gone back and looked at the goals and objectives, and while we didn't change any of the goals, we did do some rewording, and those were included in the packet that or in the materials behind this agenda item. It's not our intent to go through and make any type of a formal goal and objective by goal and objective presentation today, but we are looking for input. If any of the board members have any observations on the goals and objectives that we put out there, we're certainly willing to entertain those. Our intent is to come back in the July meeting and take the goals and objectives and then populate that further with strategies. Those strategies will represent projects and activities that are recommended to be funded in your 2017 budget. And just to show you an example, here where we have the first goal and two objectives, where we say we're going to support the development of surface water. Obviously, Allen's Creek is a very clear strategy under that objective, and what we intend to do then is populate more of these objectives and more of the goals to represent the level of effort that we have to address the strategic plan. So that's all I have for presentation, unless there's one of the members that has some comments on the goals and objectives as we included them in the packet. If not, again, we'll bring this back to you in July for you to readopt the strategic plan for fiscal 2017.
This time of the year, we bring to you
a look at what our financial forecast is going to be looking at and give you an opportunity to see what we're thinking about and how we're going to have for the budget for next year, as well as the 5-year plan. You may have questions now or maybe after this meeting, and you can always get back with Phil to answer any questions we may be able to get back to you on. The main purpose of this is the preliminary look. We still are working on the budget to try to get up with the right numbers and everything. But once we conclude this, we'll come back in July for approval on the 2017 budget. First, I want to look at some of the assumptions I used. And you can see in revenue, I've removed the interruptible water in the numbers for the budget, simply because it's a small number, and two, I'm being conservative and putting only water that's known sales. Also, we had 39,000 acre-feet of water that went to full system rate. We also are working with Abilene to sell 7,200 acre-feet of water. And then the West Central Brazos pipeline was sold, therefore we removed the revenue for that. Next on expenses, we have an employment cost index increases of about 1.8%, and our merit increases are 3.2, giving us about 5%, which is pretty normal year-on-year increases for our employees. Also, we had 2 headcount reductions from the West Central Brazos pipeline, but we're adding 4 headcounts for that. And then again, the Brazos, West Central Brazos pipeline expenses, since we have sold it, those expenses are not in the budget. So let's take a look at the financials that we have out here. And as you can see, what I'm trying to do is show you all the different pieces, the moving elements in the forecast itself. Revenue has a modest increase year on year. We do have in 2021, 37,000 acre-feet of water that will be switching over to full system rate. The projects themselves, as we mentioned before, we have Allen's Creek. We also have the Limestone Lake maintenance that we're going to have to be doing. So there are major projects we have to account for going out into the 5-year plan. Also, I do want to mention that we did sell the Possum Kingdom, and that's in my projection. So FY16 is my newest projection on what we expect to happen for this year. And that was $10 million along with the West Central Brazos pipeline for $11 million. We are showing that we will have to start borrowing money in 2019, and those are the bond proceeds I have for that. And now I'm going to go ahead and explain what makes up that working capital and the system rates. So this is a busy slide, but what I'm trying to do is show you how we balance between the system rate, how we deal with the debt coverage, and then also what is required in our reserves that we maintain. As you can see, I have a modest increase of about 2% up to 3%, getting out to 2021 when we have 37,000 acre-feet coming back in at full system rate. So the intent was really to try to get something that would match to our employees' cost increases, but then try to balance it with the debt coverage that we have coming up and borrowing more money in 2019. We are required to maintain a 1.3 ratio coverage, and I'm proving that, yes, we did make those coverages. And then the reserves, which in 2005, this board mandated that we must have a 90-day working capital on operating expenses, contingent reserve of $5 million, and self-insurance of $500,000. So with the balancing of that, that's what generated my ending working capital.
David, should we be concerned about the decline in the working capital?
Well, in addition to this, we also have a restricted repair and maintenance of almost $5 million. That's not in this number here. So technically speaking, we probably have a total of about, when you get out here, almost 20 million.
We've been spending money awful fast.
Yes, we have. I went with the minimum. I figured this would at least satisfy on increasing the rates that we are meeting the required reserve requirements year on year.
In the same line of thinking, in the same line of thinking, we're budgeting an increase of 5% per employee for annual cost, and we're anticipating a lot of cost in the Allens Creek, it would seem to me it would be quite reasonable to anticipate a lot of those kinds of rates of increase by changing the system right now. Why not make it 3% now or 3.5% now and put some money in the bank?
Well, we can do that. I was trying to keep, can I show you the next slide here? This is what I'm looking at between the two budgets, between 16 and 17. And you can see I've raised it from 70.5 to 72. And in that, it generates what's called a rate stabilization fund. So I am increasing the rate by 2%. Otherwise, the rate would have been the same at 70.5. So what I was trying to do is show a normalized rate to kind of be responsible that it's about 2% to 3% up. Now, we haven't finished our forecast beyond that to see where the rates are going to be. As you probably know, if we use the Water Development Board funds, there are deferrals on a lot of those interest and principals. So we need to work through some of those numbers to see where those rates are going to be going in the years out.
The logic for part of this is back whenever we first got here, Sal and some of us, we had rates being increased up to 15% a year. And whenever we, the staff, had to go out and tell the customers that your rate's been increased, and we didn't have a methodology then to explain why. And the reason we didn't say why, because it was a picked out of the area number that somebody says our water is too low. It needs to be higher, because at that point in time there was a larger spread between the LCRA and us, for example. And so we did a model, and we kept with us and gone out where we could look the guy in the eye and said, the reason we're doing this is because such, and such, and that's worked out good so far. Doesn't say you can't change it, but that's the background and the logic.
I think that's been a good.
It's been, if I may, it's been a good model, and it's worked well over the years recently. However, we just approved up to an $86 million that expense in this plan through 2021 is not showing up anywhere, correct? Because that's a capitalized expense.
Yeah.
So that's us potentially today, putting together a plan to spend $86 million, and we're not accounting for it. When do we start accounting for money that we are committing to spend? And wouldn't it be prudent? Now's the day. We do have something we can say, here's why we need to go up a little bit more than we've gone in the past. And if we spread it out over more of our time frame, it's going to be easier on everybody, and it'll be a lot better. I mean, and that's a judgment call, and I don't know what the rule of thumb is on it, but I mean, we have real dollars we're setting up to spend for.
But we are contemplating these numbers. You can see the capital projects. We're planning on spending $22 million next year, up to 19, 28, 29.
You have them in your cash flow then.
Right, we do.
Cash flow.
And we also have the limestone lake maintenance, plus the other dam maintenance we have too.
That's right.
So we have quite a bit
on
built into the
you're doing it on a
projects.
cash
If you
flow.
look back at last year's forecast, it was considerably lower than that. So we put in a lot of work and look at the projects. And obviously, as we work more with Houston and understand what's going on, we'll know more about.
I think it would be important for us to perhaps next meeting or supplemental to this one to be able to use this model.
Right.
If we owned 100% of the.
Yes, I agree with that.
100% of the reservoir
and
expense.
That would also may have play into that number as well.
I think we'd be short on our bond coverage. If you just.
But again, this is a preliminary look, and I mean, you may have more questions after this meeting, and be more than happy to take those questions in. But as we move through the summer, working with Houston and everything else, we'll find out more about what this could be.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot developing. Right.
There's a lot more work to be done.
This doing it this way was where we didn't want to come in here and you got one meeting to make up your mind, and it's the first time you've seen it and you say, whoa, that's too big a pill to swallow. We can't do that. So that's why we laid it out this way.
Remind me, when do we go with our annual meeting?
Things to justify our water rate?
In July.
So we need
It starts, I think,
first week in July.
mid-July.
It's not too far.
Okay. Any other questions? Like I said, be more than happy to take questions after this, even later on next week or something if you think of something.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
Agenda item 17, the Board of Directors will conduct a closed meeting and executive sessions on the following matters. A, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of the property in Austin County in relation to Allen's Creek Reservoir, pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.072 of the Texas Open Meeting Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. B, to consult with attorneys regarding potential litigation with respect to Brazos River Authority's low-flow project at Lake Granbury, pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. If you are specifically involved in the presentation of the first executive session agenda item, please excuse yourself from the boardroom at this time. With each executive session agenda item, time will be allowed to clear the boardroom and call the next presenter. We ask that the public please wait in the break room in order to keep the hallway clear until the executive session is finished.
This time I would entertain a motion to close our